Good afternoon, ladies and gents. Thanks for hanging around and spending some time with us to talk about all things Formula One. Obviously very relevant given what's going on in the city of Singapore, the country of Singapore, I should say, this coming week. Helpfully, we've got a timer in front of us here. There's an awful lot for us to get through. We actually had a phenomenal conversation outside, which hopefully we can replicate that gold for you guys over the course of the next half an hour. But my job today is basically to eke as many nuggets of wisdom out of the esteemed panel that sit before you today. So we're going to be quick fire because we only have half an hour. Thank you very much. We only have half an hour, but obviously in that time we want to make sure that this conversation is as rich and informative for all of you as we can possibly make it. So before I come to the panelists and the question, a bit of an overview of the topic today, and this is something quite close to my heart. So at Wasserman, I oversee all of our global motorsport clients, many of whom are in town this weekend. If you think about Formula One and the journey it's come on over the course of the last 10 years, probably, 5-10 years, it's hard to have missed it. I think it's become something of a cultural and obviously commercial force of nature, I think, in that time. It's no surprise, therefore, that brands have flocked to align themselves with this sport as well. Obviously, that creates, potentially, and we will discuss, its own problems in terms of the level of marketing noise that creates. So what we're going to go through today is a bit of an exploration on how does a brand come into the sport of Formula One, why brands still coming into the sport of Formula One, if that is the case. How does a brand come into the sport of Formula One and still cut through that noise and create impact? So I was going to introduce my panelists, but someone did a much better job of doing that. I want to beg your forgiveness in advance. Colton doesn't have this excuse, but Toby's hot off the back of a 25-hour flight from the Ryder Cup in New York. Jennie and myself just landed yesterday evening as well. So if you see the odd yawn or slightly vacant stare from one of us, please forgive us. It's nothing to do with you guys. It's just a result of some pretty hardcore jet lag. So to kick things off, I'm going to come to Colton. So Colton is marketing director for APAC for Brown-Forman, as he was introduced as. But Jack Daniels is the brand that he works with that partners with McLaren Formula One team, which throws up some interesting conversations with Toby and the Mercedes hat as well. So coming to Colton first, I wanted to explore the theme of at the very beginning, setting your partnership up for success. So what are those key steps? Jack Daniels recently renewed its partnership after 3 years with McLaren. Very successful 3 years, I like to think. Going back to the beginning, what was it about Formula One? You were involved in that deal coming together. What was it about Formula One that was so right for Jack Daniels? How was your partnership set up for success from the very beginning?
That's a great question. There we go, I'm live. And thank you for clarifying on my title. I know it looks like I might work for a law firm, Brown-Forman, but we're a spirits ownership company, and our biggest brand that we own is Jack Daniels. And as you mentioned, we just renewed our partnership, another multi-year deal. You were part of the conversation very early days. We partnered with Wasserman to activate that, and a big thanks to the team at McLaren for making it such a successful partnership so far. But I think one of the reasons, to your question, that we've loved it is because we started the evaluation of asking ourselves a very simple and singular question. What can we do to help us sell more Jack? So our objective wasn't, drive buzz and awareness with ultra-premium consumers in a certain country. It wasn't super specific from a marketing side or from a commercial side. It was really holistic. And so that's how we approached partnership conversations with McLaren, and they were very respectful and receptive to that. And that formed the way that we shaped the partnership. So of course, there's rights that we're leveraging that give us more exposure into a more premium consumer audience, into a growing interest and passion point around motorsport, into a very global fan base that McLaren has in markets where Jack Daniels still needs to do some development. On the flip side, we're pretty massive in the United States, where McLaren still had more room to do development. So it allowed us to sort of structure that conversation to make sure we were both getting the most out of it, and not just from the marketing and brand awareness side. The rights package that we negotiated, it also included limited edition products, which gave us much more interesting points to talk about with our retailers, more space on the floor, more reasons to drive footfall in their stores. And then, of course, the hospitality element lets us entertain our biggest customers, our distributors, our high net worth clients. So the partnership from the beginning was structured, again, around one question: how will this help us sell more Jack? And really the rest of our book of brands. And McLaren was fantastic in coming to the table with a very creative rights package that lets us do that. And it also gives us, I think, an interesting perspective when we go to activate about how we can pull each one of those levers, depending on the race, depending on the venue, depending on the audience, to maximize the value of that partnership.
Thank you. That was awesome. I think coming from the agency side, obviously working with a number of clients in the sport, it was very refreshing, let's say, when we had that conversation with you initially. You were very, very clear coming into the partnership as to why this would work for you. And obviously, you're there to sell more stuff, right? I mean, that should be the ultimate goal for any brand in the sport, really. It's a means to an end. So coming at it from a slightly different point of view, Toby, if I may, F1, offers huge reach, but cutting through in a meaningful way can be a challenge for a brand. How, from a rights holder side of things at Mercedes, have you approached partnership storytelling, activation, to make sure that investment drives real brand and business impact? I think storytelling for me is something that is often overlooked by brands coming to the sport. Everyone gets hugely excited by the opportunity to go into Paddock Club and put on great hospitality programs and activating fan zones and things, but the bridging of that narrative arc between races, I think, is something that's often overlooked, and having that core narrative that pulls through. So from a rights holder point of view, how have you worked with partners to help bring that to life?
Yeah, I think from a rights activation perspective, what I've seen a lot of partners focus on, those that have been in the sport for a number of years, is actually start to look to sort of bundle their rights a lot more. So I think there's a temptation when you come into sport, especially when your objective is awareness, to try and spread yourself quite thin. You need to be everywhere. I need to be in every market. Where actually, in reality, as we were saying, I mean, cutting through the noise here, if you're spreading your rights too thin, then in an attempt to be everywhere, you're kind of nowhere. So, taking IWC, one of our longest-serving partners, as a prime example, they've really gone down that kind of hero race activation plan. So they'll kind of focus on 2 to 3 races a year, where they will just go all in on everything. So rather than kind of doing this sort of always on, they've got these 2 or 3 huge spike moments a year where you really drive that cut through. Last year, for example, in Miami, they even supplemented what they're doing with us with local market activation. So they actually partnered with Uber. So as soon as you got off the plane and you went to get an Uber, there you were, hit with the IWC branding and using all of the assets and the imagery that come through from us. From a storytelling perspective, I think the most innovative approach that we've done recently with a partner was actually with WhatsApp. I don't know if any of you guys have seen The Seat on Netflix, which sort of charted Kimi's journey from the moment that Lewis let us know that he was off to pastures new, to Kimi jumping in the car for the first time in Australia this year. But actually, if you watch that documentary, I think WhatsApp's mentioned once. And that's where Toto sort of says, Kimi, I'm jumping on this WhatsApp call to let you know you're going to be the driver next year. But actually, what they've done very cleverly is they've subliminally let you all know how important WhatsApp is to the communication of the team. So whether that be with, digital graphic overlays, where you have audio pings as well with WhatsApps, etc. So it was kind of saying that the story behind the story was all conducted on WhatsApp. But at the same time, they've gone, I don't want to ram the WhatsApp messaging down the consumer's throat here. I've got to tell a story that's compelling at the same time that actually the audience wants to hear. So they've both combined a story that the audience wants to see, but also let the world know that this story happened on WhatsApp behind the scenes. And then last but not least, I suppose another way that I've seen it happen really successfully this year in particular is with our new partnership with Adidas. So they've got more sporting partnerships than I've had hot dinners. So they have a very wide talent pool to kind of lean on. Not just within sport, they've done the obvious things like seeding product out to other big brand ambassadors, whether that be Benzema, Jude Bellingham, etc. But also working with some of their more entertainment partnerships as well. So we recently took Formula One to Puerto Rico for the first time, the day before the Bad Bunny global tour kicked off. And if anyone's a fan of Bad Bunny in Formula One, then you're going to enjoy what's coming for the next couple of months as well. So, there's some examples that I've seen in which partners are thinking innovatively to help cut through the noise.
And just to stick with you for a moment, we're talking about setting up success. What are the kind of conversations that a brand should be having with the right soul? Brands coming in for the first time, perhaps not quite sure what to be asking for or how to be managing that conversation with you. From an advisory point of view, from a rights holder, what kind of advice are you giving brands around that process as well?
Yeah, so with any of our onboarding meetings or biennial workshops that we do with partners, the first thing we look at is their partnership objectives. So, recently we've gone through the whole mid-year process of all our partners, and we'll go, okay, do these objectives still make sense to your brand? Are they still driving value? Okay, then that's got to be the North Star for the partnership moving forward. Let's not get distracted by shiny new toys within the industry and go off course. You've got to make sure that everything you're doing is harking back to the centralized objectives of the partnership and making sure those objectives are still relevant to the brand. So that's the first process that we go through, and yeah, it's one that it sounds obvious, and it is, but it's something that needs to be done.
Thanks, Matt. I'm going to come to Jennie now. So we've set the partnership up for success. We've heard from the partnership experts, let's say. I guess in your capacity as a commentator of the sport and the voice of the fan in all of this, I guess, identifying white space, brands showing up authentically in the sport, I think is very interesting. I think brands sometimes make the mistake of coming in the sport and behaving like they behave in other spaces, as opposed to being sensitive to the nuances of the world in which they're brought into. So hearing a bit from you about that, I think also hearing in the same vein a slight segue into different teams adopting different approaches to their commercial models. And you've got our friends at McLaren who, at last count, I think we were up to about 53 or 54. There was another one this week. Jack Daniel's still very much the favourite. But you've got McLaren coming into the sport and adopting a commercial model of brands coming in that can add something to what they've got. You've then got other teams like Mercedes, Audi have been quite vocal about this, Williams as well, where there's a limit on the number of partners they're looking to bring in. Is there a right or wrong? How do fans see that? How important is it to fans?
Firstly, hello everybody. Thank you for bearing with us. I think my role as a storyteller, in a way, is to look at what's happening on the ground and relate that back to the many thousands, millions of people that can't get to come to an F1 event. And actually, the way that F1 has grown is brilliant for me, because it's not all about the race weekend. F1 has developed into a fans event that continues. Some fans don't even interact with the race. That's not what it's about. It's about the drivers. It's about the teams. It's about many things that don't happen to be the race. And I think we started to see that when Drive to Survive got some form of traction. So after about season 2, people bought in to what this new F1 was, to what Liberty brought to the table. And what they bought is massive, if you look at it as a case study. Because before Liberty came in, you came to Singapore, I remember the first couple, and you didn't really know that it was on. You went to sometimes a new city, and there might be a flag attached to a lamppost saying, F1 this weekend. That was it. And now this sea of opportunity has opened up. And as you say, some teams want to embrace that. McLaren, they want as many sponsors as possible because they will find a way of working with each of their sponsors. Other teams, more bespoke. What you get with F1, just like the cars, just like the drivers, it's not a one-size-fits-all product, is it? There are many opportunities to develop for other people coming into the sport. So if you look at the brand like Elemis, they've partnered with Aston Martin, one of the first global female brands to come into the sport. And it really is a landmark moment because this opens up a whole new fan base and a whole new opportunity. I think 42% of fans are now female. So it totally makes sense for more female brands to enter the sport and make an opportunity for themselves. And I think what LMS are able to do is cut through and find that moment for them and highlight the fact that actually it's not all about male sport. It's not all about the drivers. LMS don't market really to males. They market to females. There are no F1 female drivers at the minute, but it hasn't stopped LMS. And I think that's really interesting going forward.
Thank you for that. Colton, from a brand perspective then, we talk about white space. How important is that for a brand in terms of allowing your partnership to really flourish? And also, is there still untapped potential in F1? Do we still feel that there's more to come?
I think absolutely, Scott. And to what Jennie was just talking about, the untapped potential comes in two ways. One, you have the increased reach, the size of the pie gets bigger and bigger. There's more fans from more different demographics, from more parts of the world, more brands coming in which bring their audiences with them, and that's just more experiences and touch points, more content being created in a super innovative way to engage those more eyeballs. There are going to be opportunities there if you're willing to find them. But back to Toby's point, you also have to know as a partner, as a brand, and with your partner, what is your objective, what's your core objective, so you can focus that search for that innovative way to cut through. I think our point of view as Jack Daniels is more of a brand of the people, right? You were talking about how many millions of folks can't get to the race, right? And so we have the wonderful world of media that can bring the excitement of Formula One to them. But even within the city, within Singapore, right, this weekend, within Melbourne on Australia race weekend, in Japan, in China, as part of my remit, there are thousands and thousands of people who would love to experience the thrill and the speed and the rush of the race and the interest and the passion of the sport and the storylines, but they're not going to be able to make it into the track. So we've always looked at what can we do around the city during the week or month of the event to really bring that excitement to the people and have Jack be there as part of that momentary or that memorable experience. Just we want Jack to be around as one of the friends during all those life-changing experiences that people have. So we feel like that's our unique point of view, and as more and more people and more brands come into the sport, there's more and more creative ways to do that, as long as it's sort of anchored to your purpose.
Just to add some context to that, I think the latest stats were out. There was over 800 million globally now identify as avid Formula One fans, which shows you the overall size of the prize.
It's massive, isn't it?
Ridiculous.
The change over the last 10 years. It's impressive.
And only 6 million of those this year will likely get to a race. So the huge untapped potential for brands, I think, is still very much there. So, Jennie, coming back to yourself, if we talk about brands showing up authentically in this space, when you're activating a partnership, are there rules of engagements? Are there do's and don'ts as the voice of the fan and a literal commentator on the world of Formula One? Are there do's and don'ts? Is there a blueprint, perhaps, how brands can and should show up in this space? And I'm also going to come to you too for a point of view on that.
Please do. I look at the past to guide the future. And you look at some of the things that haven't worked, some of the moments that people looked at their own branding and thought, this isn't working for us. So I look back to Emirates. So Emirates had a very successful partnership with F1 until about 2013. And there's a very famous picture of the rear wing of an F1 car, which had the Emirates branding along it, having been collected after a big crash. And it was just one of the marshals with this wing under their arm walking along. And that picture just blew up everywhere. And Emirates looked at that before Liberty took over and went, this is not good for our brand. A crash with a car, people will assimilate a crash with a plane. We don't want any of this. And I was quite good friends with the VP at the time. And they pulled away. And pulling away at that moment in time, whilst I understand it, now with hindsight, you look back and go, oh my goodness, what did you do? Because that was the exact moment that F1 exploded. It took off everywhere. And now I think it's Qatar Airways is the official F1 partner when it comes to airlines. and they must be sitting there licking their lips because the growth and expansion has been phenomenal. So I think when you're looking at what you did in the past, Emirates would give their right arm to be back in the sport now. And in terms of what fans want, they just want to get as close as they can to a piece of the action, to a driver, whatever is their favorite thing, whether it's the speed, whether it's, you know, the guys looking good, whether it's actually the girlfriends and the fashion. There are so many different aspects that appeal to fan bases now, and that has shifted massively. And I don't think there's really a wrong way of doing it right now.
I think even a cheap way to get in to see some of the biggest music stars in the world, right? You get some racing on the side, even if you're not a Formula One fan. Anything to add to that, chaps, at all? Do's and don'ts, anything you've learned along the way?
Yeah, firstly, that story is so infamous, I think it actually did put a lot of airlines off for a few years. But yeah, I think enough water is under the bridge that they're starting to come back. But I think, I mean, the key word that has been used with regards to do's and don'ts there is authenticity. Colton, you mentioned unique point of view as well earlier as well. So I think, you know, like, we're all consumers, right? And consumers aren't idiots. If you try to jump on a bandwagon just because it's hot right now, they're going to see straight through it. So I think first and foremost, if you're going to get involved in some of the, I don't know, CSR elements or the D&I elements, make sure it's actually authentic to your brand. Make sure your brand actually believes in it and it's got actions that can back it up. You know, from our perspective as a team, if you take sustainability as an example, right? We've got Petronas, which to a lot of people might not seem like a natural bedfellow with the word sustainability, but they've actually invested astronomical amount of money into the sustainable fuels that are going to be coming out next year. You know, moreover, as you know, Scott, you know, they've been working on a number of projects for years with regards to replenishing mangroves across Malaysia to help offset some of their carbon footprint. We also have Signify, our lighting partner, who every single meeting I'm ever in with them, they are genuinely passionately talking about how they've got the most efficient lighting in the world. It uses less energy, and that's what they want their story to be written around. They also, you know, help mimic natural light with their lighting, which helps with human performance as well. So again, these are natural, real stories that you can then build around rather than going, I want to tell that story, how do I shoehorn an action into it? So authenticity is absolutely important when it comes to the do's and don'ts.
And if you look at one authentic case study, look at what happened with Valtteri Bottas at the start of the year. He teamed up with Uber, and it was a very genuine reflection of what Valtteri Bottas is like. He didn't have a drive. He was reserve and third driver for Mercedes. However, he brought his personality and character to that advert, and it went massive. It was a success for Uber as much as it was for Mercedes, and personally for Valtteri Bottas. And now all of a sudden he finds himself back in F1 with Cadillac next year. But I think he's got a massive fan base just from that activation alone, that one promotional advertisement. And so it can change the course of a driver's outcome and a team's outlook as well as just an activation.
I just want to come back to the fact as well, Toby, you passed all of the tests there in terms of brand messaging. Absolutely bang on for all of your brands. Well done. Very good. We're flashing red up here, so we got 6 minutes left. And one last area. One last area. Not with you lot talking. It's not. One last area I wanted to have a look at, which is kind of looking a little bit more forward, I guess, capitalising on the growth of Formula One. The trajectory, it seems, continues to be pointing north. The success of, well, now very much officially the most successful sports movie of all time, Brad Pitt's most successful movie of all time, 10 times over. There's no doubt going to be F1 the movie 2, you know what Hollywood's like, and 3 and 4 and 5. We've got change of regulations coming at the end of this year, which is going to throw team performance up in the air, which is going to keep it exciting as well. What are the opportunities for brands still coming down the line? Is there new inventory still to be unlocked? Is there still opportunities for brands looking at the sport to come in and create impact? I'm going to throw that to Colton to start with, because you haven't spoken for a little while. So I'm going to chuck that to one you start, but we'll come to the rest as well.
Well, I think that, you know, Scott, you were mentioning every year there's more and more people coming in. It's growing in popularity. There's regulation changes. It's a different landscape. Jennie, you talked about, you know, how even the events of a race can change the dynamic and the conversation. So I think that means there's continually opportunity for a brand to authentically comment on this passion point that is motorsport that is Formula One. That's one of the fastest growing and hottest passion points in the world, relevant to a broad set of consumers. So if you are authentic and timeless in where you're coming from a brand positioning perspective, but timely with the message, there's always going to be new opportunities, whether or not there's new inventory from a rights perspective. I'll let Toby speak to that a little bit more. But also, I think that those partnership teams continue to be more and more creative and doubling down on, what are the brand objectives, what are the partnership objectives, and even generating bespoke new rights opportunities. We've had a couple examples of that with co-branded, music events that are completely outside the race series, but speak to both sets of audiences and to the music, our Universal Music Group as our music partner. It's been really interesting to get creative with the teams, and think about ways that we can leverage the partnership and each of our unique brands to make everybody better.
Yeah, and to answer the question whether there's opportunity for new inventory, there's always opportunity for new inventory.
Spoken like a true salesman. Well done.
Absolutely, and to be honest, most of that tends to happen actually in the contract negotiation phase. So quite often when you're talking to a new partner, they'll come to you and say, look, we've got this business need, which we want you guys to help us tick. And ultimately, it's then our responsibility to go away, look at the sport as we know it, the best as we can, and come back to the table and go, okay, here's a new way that we can potentially activate together, which will set you apart from your competitors across the other teams. So yeah, from an inventory perspective, there's always new opportunities. And the other thing is that, the world evolves, right? Right now the buzzword that we're hearing from all of our partners is AI. How can you help us tell our AI story in a new and authentic way? 5 years ago, it was crypto. Once upon a time, there was no such thing as social media. So it's about embracing what the world throws at you as well in terms of then turning that into new inventory.
And I also think that it's looking ahead and what will fans come into the sport, or who will they be? So Hello Kitty is a new collaboration this weekend with F1 Academy. So that's targeting more children. And then you look at women coming in as well, and I'll always shout out for the women, you know me. But I think the partnerships with Lego have been phenomenally successful, and that speaks to everyone across the board. There isn't anyone that really hates Lego, I believe, unless you step on them. That's painful. But if you look back, was it Miami that they did their collaboration? And it was years in the making, but to put the drivers into Lego-built F1 cars and put them on the track parade, at that moment, the world of Lego and F1, it was just sensational. The drivers loved it, the teams loved it, everyone loved it.
It helps that all the drivers are just big children, doesn't it? And they want to just crash into each
Exactly.
other.
Well, Kimmy's barely just a child anyway. He's not very old. But and I love Legos, except I do have 3 kids, so I step on them all the time. But even, speaking as a partner, we can't be on the McLaren Lego set because we're a beverage alcohol product. But we still love when we see that because it brings more families into the sport. It brings, more interest. It brings more texture. It brings more creativity. And it challenges us to speak to what Toby was talking about. The rights are only limited by how creative you can be as a partnership. If you can dream it, we can probably figure it out and build it.
I love that, yeah. And actually, that's just given me a lovely little ending as well. Thank you, Colton. It's like we rehearsed it. So we've got 1 minute to go, so this is going to be very quick fire. Talking of dreaming, put your dreaming hats on. What can we expect to see from Formula One next? Go as far out there as you want. What haven't we seen yet that could still come?
More activations in the US would be, if you want a simple answer, I think. I was at the Ryder Cup, as you said, at the weekend. Every single person that, I had a conversation with in F1 came up. They couldn't wait to tell me how much, they're now a massive fan, weirdly, since around 2019, 2020 time. I wonder why. But I would have thought, the race market's going to be saturated, but stuff like live demo events, partner activations, I think the US has still got a lot of growth.
Okay.
I think jumping off adjacent to that, just more activation beyond the track. Mm-hmm. So outside of race weekends, outside of race season, outside of race cities, partners and rights holders coming together to drive and activate that interest outside the races.
And I think with the new regulations set next year and a reshuffle of the competitive order potentially, that could bring smaller teams that have been lingering at the back right up to the front and being really competitive. We'll have to see how it works out. But yeah, that could really be exciting.
Exciting times. And bang on the buzzer as well. And I know that we've got Ian lined up now to come and continue the whole Formula One conversation. So keep going. You want us to keep going? Yeah, we can keep going.
This is a fantastic conversation. You've got 5 more minutes.
Perfect. We've got 5 more minutes. Look at this. We've got 5 more minutes, so we can keep going. Now we've got to think of other stories to talk about as well. We could just sit up here and chat if you guys are right with that. We haven't caught up in a while, so we could
get
just
some
do that
Jack
if you like.
Daniels, and then we can continue.
We can get some Jack, and this could
call,
become very, very entertaining for you all. We actually timed this perfectly to finish, and now we've got. It even says to us on the screen, please continue. So
Does anyone have any questions?
I think
Maybe we can throw it
so
open.
Toby's got something else to say. Sorry, everyone. Toby wants to speak again. Go on, Toby.
No, shock horror.
You're going to mention the Ryder Cup again, are you? Go on.
No, I was actually going to build on one thing that Colton said a minute ago with regards to, you're only as good as how creative the partnerships team are. And I actually think one other really positive evolution in our world is the fact that brands and rights holders are becoming far less transactional in the way that they deal with each other. Once upon a time, you had your marketing rights. That's the menu. You tick it off one at a time, and that's it. If you want anything else, tough. Yep. We can talk about it in 4 years when the contract's up for renewal. Whereas nowadays, I think, partners are very much partnering a lot better. And so, especially when it comes from a team perspective, we realize that actually we need to be more proactive with building our brand as well. Rather than just being a platform for brands to market for us, it's there for us to market together. So I think that's a really positive move in the industry too.
I also found it really interesting. We were having a little chat before this. And you spoke about actually the partners helping each other. And before that, you wouldn't collaborate. It was very much this is my bit, this is my section of the pie. But now it seems like it's more communal approach. And yes, you specialize in one thing, but brands can help each other out, which I find fascinating.
Absolutely. I mean, just speaking to a couple examples of that, there are lots of race weekends that take place in places around the world where there's pretty severe alcohol service restrictions and activation restrictions. But Hilton, another partner of McLaren, often has the ability to, entertain guests and serve beverage alcohol in places around the world. So in Baku, just last race, that's where we held our activation, was within the Hilton, working together as two partners. And I think that you'll continue to see more and more examples of that, whether that's on race weekend or outside race weekend. So another co-partner, Goldman Sachs. We don't only sell Jack Daniels, we also have some very fine ultra premium and prestige plus single malt scotches that go very, very high up in value. So we've partnered with them.
If you've got a few thousand to spend, get yourself down to the Crown Whiskey Museum. It's coming. It's coming.
But we've partnered with Goldman Sachs to bring, some of their clients who are very interested in fine and rare whiskeys, into our spaces to have bespoke tastings and even generate ideas around bespoke cask bottlings and things like that for their customers. So that's outside race weekend completely, but we came together with them because of the partnership.
Yeah, I mean, rinse and repeat really for what we're doing over here. I mean, we were talking earlier, we've got Adidas are doing their own sort of hospitality over at Turn 13. They've partnered with Marriott, another partner of ours, who are activating within that space. They've got their own branded zone. They're able to bring in their Bonvoy members. And it all starts at the partner summits that we host at the beginning of the year. So we actively encourage our partners to be networking together, because the reality is that if you're working together, you're pooling resources, you're only going to be able to create bigger and better activations, which benefits everyone. So, yeah, I mean, it's, again, seems obvious and something that probably should have been happening a long time ago, but it's definitely something we encourage and hope for more of.
I'm just going to come back to a point you were making earlier on, Toby, as well. I know we've talked about this a lot in the past, that the evolution of the teams, and the teams almost in a way having to keep up or play catch up with the way that the sport's growing, right? Is that it was very, very transactional from a partnership to brand point of view, whereas the teams themselves need to be marketeers, right? They need to think like marketeers because they are working with some of the best marketeering brains in the world now, with the partners that are coming into the sport, and the expectations of the brand on how the rights holders show up is much more expansive than perhaps it was in the past, right? So even in the time that you've been involved on the team side, you must have seen an evolution around that. Massively,
and I think, whilst the sport has gotten much more popular in the last sort of 5 to 6 years, that comes with more competition as well. I mean, we're one of 9, soon to be 10 teams competing for all of these brands' attention. So, you have to evolve, you have to step up, you have to level up, and I'd like to think we're doing a good job on that front, and as I'm sure Colton will say, McLaren are doing too.
We're not going to get into that. We've run out of time. thankfully. So we have now run out of time. Thank you all for listening. I think we could have kept going for quite a while, and we'll probably continue the conversation afterwards. But as I was saying, the Formula One theme continues with Ian, who's now up. Thank you all for taking time out of your busy days to spend with us, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.